What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm going to talk about why the market's looking very promising heading into tomorrow and some very, very key levels to watch for. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed at 30 in total. And the offer is very, very soon at the end of March. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with this market. So looking at SPY's charts, we have a technical uptrend right here. We're technically making higher lows, but the question is, can we continue this trend to break this high to fill this gap up here? There's a good chance it may attempt to do that, but that depends on some factors. So what happened for today? The first thing that happened was we got the Fed rates decision. The Fed has kept the Fed funds future rate the same, not really changing anything. Then we had the big guy, Jerome Powell, giving a speech, and he went on and basically just talked about the same things he usually talks about. He mentioned that the Fed does not want to be in a position where they, cuts too fast or they raise rates too much. They want to be very careful with this balance, and then they have to wait and see what the data suggests for them to continue to, cut rates. Right? He mentioned that they're not in a position to do that right now, especially when looking at the labor markets, but they could change that view if we continue to get good inflationary data. He also talked about how politics is not going to dictate what the Fed does. It has more to do with data, and they want to be very unbiased when it comes to that. Jerome Powell went on about how, once again, the Fed is going to be in a more ambiguous place because you have to think about what's going to happen to the future of the U.S. and factors like that when it comes to like tariffs and many changes to policy. So that could also affect a lot of different things out there. But for the most part, he just said the same things he typically says, but how the Fed has to just wait and see. The Fed has to be very, very patient, and they are in a very, very good place. He also went on about how the U.S. economy is in a good place. He said that the economy is still very strong, the labor market's doing well, and he basically pushed that it's going to continue to be that way. So I didn't see anything else that was too crazy. He didn't really give us any insights about whether or not they're going to be cutting more, cutting less. It has more to do with the data, so that's pretty much it. Right now, the market thinks there's about a 77% chance the Fed keeps rates the same again during the next meeting, which is going to be all the way in March. So that's what happened. When Jerome Powell was speaking, the market saw a bit of a dip all the way down to 599. Then SPY got bought back up to about 603. So we traded sideways for the most part. Didn't really make too much of a crazy move. Now, then we had the big catalyst that came out after that. That's earnings. We had Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, and IBM all announcing earnings. And this was huge. So 3 out of 4 of them are in the green, pushing quite nicely, but one of them did dump, so it's kind of mixed. However, I am I am a little bit more optimistic about this because of the fact that our key ETFs and indices are holding support. So starting off with IBM, I'm going to be very brief with this one. EPS was at $3.92 above expectations. Revenue was at $17.55 billion above expectations. We saw net income increase quite a bit to about $2.92 billion. And for the full year growth, we're looking at about 5% to about $13.5 billion in free cash flow, which is not bad whatsoever. The revenue also grew quite a bit, so that's a good piece of news for them. So it was bullish. That's why the share price is up quite a bit. Good guidance. Great job by IBM. Then we had Meta. Meta did relatively well. It's worth noting that they ended up beating by a large margin. We saw their EPS up by about 50%, which is incredible. It's about $8.02 compared to what we were expecting at $6.76. We saw revenue for the quarter at about $48.4 billion. That's above the $47 billion expectation. That is up 21%, which is incredible. So great job by Meta. When it comes to their guidance, well, you first have to look at what's driving revenue. We're going to be looking at their ads, which are once again up about 6 and 14%. On top of this, we also saw their revenue outlook just continuing to grow. It came in like so-so, I would say. It was up about 12%, not as much as what we probably would have wanted. But if anything, it was at a range between $39.5 and $41.8 billion. We were expecting $41.7 billion, so it's still technically close to that. But if anything, not too bad. We also saw their expenses guide kind of like range a little bit more. So that's something that's worth noting. They're going to be investing a lot more into AI. So there were questions a lot about AI and what's happening with the DeepSeek. Despite that, they remained pretty much in a state where, although they mentioned the possibility of how this could reshape the AI landscape, they still are going to continue to buy up these chips and develop AI the way we're going to do anyways. So they're still pledging to spend, tens of billions on AI, and they're remaining very, very confident despite the news that had come out. They also mentioned that with the things that are coming out, they expect good guidance. So with good guidance, even though it wasn't as strong as what we could have gotten, they had good earnings overall, and they're still very convicted in their AI demand, which is why the share price is still doing well. So just to clarify, IBM did well, good job by them. Meta did well, good job by them. Share prices are green. Microsoft is in the red, despite the fact that earnings were not too bad. They had an EPS of $3.23. That's ahead of the $3.11 that analysts were expecting. Revenues at about $69.63 billion, topping estimations. Sales are up about 12%. So good earnings overall. But looking at their cloud services, they only increased by about 31% year over year, down from about 33% growth from the previous quarter. They were looking for even bigger growth, so it came a little bit short of that. So one particular part of their revenue was a little bit weak. Besides that, there was some talk about DeepSeek that raised a lot of questions about the amount of money that they're spending on their infrastructure. They are still committed to spending about $80 billion on AI infrastructure in the current fiscal quarter, and for the fiscal year. Despite them being questioned about this during the call, they maintained their stance and they tried to keep their heads up. However, because of the fact that their cloud computing growth came short of expectations, the share price is down about 5%. So that's actually a bigger drop. That is offsetting, I would say, Meta a little bit and maybe like many others. But then we had Tesla. So Tesla was insane. Okay. I want to say this, their EPS revenue were not that good. They came at about $25.7 billion in their revenue. That's less than the $27.3 billion expected. Their EPS was also a miss at 73 cents a share, below the expectation of 76 cents. So not the best earnings from Tesla, but the share price of Tesla is going bananas. It's up quite a bit. It's currently up about, let me just double check this. It's up like 4% because Elon Musk and the team hyped up the future of Tesla, right? In a nutshell, just to summarize my notes, I actually took a lot of notes on it. Musk said, Musk said that the Model Y was the highest selling vehicle of any kind in 2024 Q4. They want to maximize its volume. They went on about how Tesla has large deployments of manufacturing and robotics. They talked about how 2026 is going to be epic, and then there's going to be extremely amazing growth in 2027 and 2028. Then there was a big piece of news that came out about how they're going to see a lot of very, very exponential growth in FSD, and Optimus has the potential to reach more than $10 trillion in value. Musk also said that Tesla has the potential to become the most valuable company on the planet. And then there's a huge piece of news that came out. Tesla has announced that in June, the unsupervised FSD is going to be launched as a paid service. They have it in Fremont. They're going to expand it as well in California. So basically, in Texas and California this year, by the middle of this year, they're going to be unleashing their unsupervised FSD autonomous driving, which is very, very awesome. And that's going to be expanding closer to like the end of this year, possibly to more of the US. And then other countries become another possibility. Musk mentioned that, this is going to help generate billions more in revenue, if not trillions. And then their Optimus robot is going to be a $10 trillion market. So that's very, very awesome to see that. Then they went on about production and factors like that, and potentially even some more affordable models, which they haven't really announced quite yet. So they're working on the mechanics and the production lines, and overall, very, very bullish news by Tesla. I'm very excited about it. And that's what really hyped up the share price. The AI talk, the Optimus robot talk, affordable models, and FSD really pumped the share price. Share price is still at resistance. So as far as Tesla goes, just to be very frank, we want to see if this resistance breaks. But so far, I would say that the earnings were a little bit more bullish than bearish because we had three stocks, big ones in the green. We saw Tesla run very nicely. We saw Meta in the green. We saw IBM in the green, but then Microsoft was the only one that was a little bit down. So keep that in mind, a little bit more bullish than bearish because of all of that. Now, when it comes to news for tomorrow, it's going to be Thursday, January 30th, 2025. Remember that at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, an hour before the stock market opens, we have initial jobless claims, not to mention the GDP growth rate coming out. GDP growth is going to be important to understand what's happening with the current forecasts, and that may have another effect on the markets. So get ready for that big data that's coming out. And we also have our bill auctions in the evening. But that's pretty much it, guys. That's all we're going to be looking for. So let's talk about SPY, then I'll break down the rest of the big tech stocks. Just know that for SPY, okay, I would say earnings is a little bit more bullish than bearish because of the fact that we saw a lot more of these stocks in the green. I would say Tesla plus Meta plus IBM being in the green could, to some extent, offset Microsoft being in the red. Maybe. I really hope for that. So, if anything, I would say that if SPY could continue this push and get back above 604. I'm expecting this to fill the gap back up to 608. This is looking very probable. If we get a rejection, if we reject and we dip to about 599, we can't hold it, then if 599 breaks, we're going to be dipping all the way down to 594. So I hope that's clear, guys. It could go either way. We're either going to reject and come back down to our 200 EMA, or we just continue to run. I'm leaning a bit more in favor of this, us trying to push higher to fill that gap. I'm hoping that we see that, because more earnings were good than bad. And if anything, Jerome Powell didn't really rug pull the markets. I would just say that he was very neutral. So we'll see. Hopefully we get that bounce. We'll see if we break past that 604 area. We look a bit more promising on the 4 hours, so we'll give it some time. Looking at the QQQ, it's a little bit in the green. Just to be frank, if we're bearish, just hypothetically, you want to see the triple Q lose the low of the day and eventually 515. If that fails us, we could easily start dipping to like below 510. If we're bullish and we start breaking upwards, you want to see us break the resistance around 525. If that breaks, we have this big gap to fill, which would take us all the way up towards the 530 area. So the majority of earnings were bullish. Hopefully this continues to push and fill the gap. I lean a little bit more in favor of this line right here as trying to fill that gap. So we'll see if the levels end up holding depending on the reaction after we get our GDP numbers and such. But I lean more towards us trying to fill this gap. For the Russell, okay, if we lose 225, we could be dipping back down to 224. As long as we rub 227, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 228.25 and eventually 230. I am leaning in the direction of this as trying to like push higher to get up to these higher lows. So I favor some more upside. For ES, we look a bit more bullish. We have this big gap to fill up here around 61.29. We want to see ES hold 60.64. If we could hold this, I'm looking for a pushback up to about 6100 and 61.29. If it does not hold, we're going to be at risk of returning to 60.30. So please be careful. This is kind of in the middle here, but I'm hoping that we hold this support to start breaking out to fill this gap up here. I hope the 6100 is coming. I do lean a little bit more in favor of that. So we'll see just to be safe. For NQ, we're making higher lows right here, which is a good sign, okay? This kind of looks like a cup and handle. You could argue that. But here's the thing, okay? I want to see us break structure at 21,660. If we break this, I think we easily push back up to about 21,800. Most of the tech stocks were good in terms of earnings. So hopefully we do push higher as I lean a bit more in that direction. If we were to lose 21,400, we're going to be dipping lower. I lean more in favor of this line right here as pushing higher, just to be very, very frank. For Bitcoin, we look bullish. We have this imbalance to fill all the way up towards the 105,000 area. If it loses 102,900, we're looking for a dip to 101,000. This is favoring upside a little bit more for 105,000. For the rest of these individual tickers, now, although Nvidia is showing a little bit of weakness, there is good news and bad news. So the bad news is we look a little bit weak on the 4 hour, but the good news is the fact that we made a higher low if we could truly hold this low. So what I mean is, we had the DeepSeek news. Nvidia dumps to about like the 115s. You guys can see we formed a double bottom here. We came back up, and now notice we held 120. So we could be making a higher low. And if that's the case, there's going to be a chance we try to get back up towards like 132. That would be very, very awesome to see. And if we break that, we have a gap to fill above. I would love to see Nvidia bounce here. If we don't hold above that, if we lose 120, we could be dipping back down to 117. So we'll see if it holds. As long as we could hold 120, I think we bounce back up towards 125, then eventually 132. So we got to hold 120. As long as that holds, I'm looking for that bounce to 132 again. So far, there's potential in this chart. For Tesla, we look good, but there's one issue. It's awesome that Tesla bounced, but I want to see if Tesla could break this yellow trend line right here. This is our resistance. 1, 2, 3 rejections off of this. We need to break past the resistance at this yellow trend line. If we break this, I think we push for 420. If we don't break this, we could return back down to like 399. So, Tesla's only up 4%, not the biggest of moves, but I hope we could break this because of all the hype involving AI, and Tesla could push for 420. We'll watch that tomorrow if this breaks or not. If it does, I remain bullish. If it doesn't, we could return to 400. So please, let's watch this very patiently, and we'll see if Tesla could break past the trend line. If it's the case, I'm looking for the 420s. I hope we do, and I lean a little bit more towards it doing that. Earnings was very, very bullish for the long term. I was very excited about it. For Aapl, there's a left shoulder, right? We got this double bottom for the head. Then we got this potential right shoulder that formed right here, which could be leading to more upside. So as you guys could tell, this is looking like a bullish setup. If we break 240 tomorrow, I'm looking for a breakout for 246. If we end up losing 236 and we can't hold that, we're looking for a move back down to 232. I'm favoring a bounce and an attempt to break past 236 in these higher levels. So give this the time it needs. I think there's a very, very good chance that this is going to try to break out. So watch and see, and we'll see how things end up going from here. With that being said, there's not really too many more details I want to go over. For now, when you look at stocks such as Netflix, we're starting to break a little bit more in favor of the upside from this wedge. This could be forming a nice accumulation, so it looks a bit more bullish. We need to lose 964 to turn back down. This is favoring that it wants to go back up to about 990. For Microsoft, sorry, not Microsoft, MicroStrategy, like I predicted, we're riding this trend line up again. I want to see us hold this. As long as we hold this trend line, we could slowly inch for 350. If we end up losing 330, we could be dipping back down to 324. So I think we favor upside. For Celsius, if we break 25.5, we're looking for an attempt for 26.15. If we end up losing 24.75, we could be looking for a dip. I think that there's a potential double bottom here, so we'll see if we get a bounce off of that back up to 26.15. So we'll see. Looking at Supermicro, we have a very interesting trend right here. Looking at the way this is moving, we're just continuing to reject. I want to see if this could base around 27.5. Once we get that base, this will attempt to bounce, but we're not quite there yet. What is good about the chart is the fact that we have a falling wedge. So this will eventually and most likely lead to a bounce soon, but we're not ready yet. We have to see for confirmation soon if we get some kind of bounce. But there's a nice falling wedge-like pattern developing, so this could lead to a nice breakout soon. We'll see about that. For Palantir, we look a bit more bullish. If we could break past 80, we're looking for 83. If we lose 77, we look for 75. This is favoring and wants to test 80 and eventually 83. For Rivian, although this is dipping, I want to see if this wedge plays out. I see a wedge right over here, just like this. So we'll see about this. I do see a potential setup that could be developing here. It is a little bearish for now until we break out of this wedge. That could lead to a breakout. We're not ready yet. It may continue to consolidate for some time before we see an attempt. So give it some time. SoFi, stuck in the middle. We have support around this 15 area, 15.5. We have resistance at 16.28. Might dip a little bit towards the mid 15s before it tries to bounce, so just keep that in mind. For AMD, we look a bit more bullish. If we break 117.8, we're looking for 119.64. If we end up losing support at 115.7, we're looking for a dip back down to 114. I am favoring it's going to be pushing back up to about 120, so I see a little bit of upside potential in this, but I want to see it break past 120. If we break that, we could try to fill this gap above. So there's potential in this setup. We'll see if we get that breakout or not. Hopefully we do end up doing so. ARM is in the middle. We need to break past 152 to turn bullish, to break out to about 162. If we lose 143, we turn back down. As of right now, we're just trading sideways, so it's just kind of stuck here, not really doing much. So we have to wait and give it some time. It's just range bound. Coin looks a bit more bullish on the 4-hour time frame. If we break past resistance, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to about 297. If we end up losing 286, we're looking for a dip back down to these lower levels, such as like 276. So I'm favoring upside a bit more to try to fill this gap to 297. We'll see if that ends up being the case. For Amazon could attempt a bounce for about 135, but I think we're range bound between 135 and 140. If we lose 130, though, we could be dumping, but I think we just kind of push and consolidate for some time, and we'll see if we break out in one of these directions. But there is some upside potential for 235 plus. Meta is looking more bullish. We're at 691 right now. I think it might try to test 700. We'll see if we break that or not, but it's still bullish after earnings have come out and some nice growth. They did very, very well with earnings. Microsoft dumped quite a bit, but what's good is it's trying to base here around this 414 area. So if buyers return at 414 and it starts getting bought up slowly since earnings were not bad, right? We just had like a minor issue with their one of their revenue streams, which wasn't too bad. This could be kind of like an exaggerated drop, and this could slowly inch its way higher, help the market recover. That could be bullish. Google looks bullish. If we break and hold above 198, we're looking for that gap fill for the low 200s. If we lose 196, we could be dipping, but I favor upside a little bit more. GameStop could be trying to hold above 27.5 to push for the 28s. AMC is a little bit lackluster, could be dipping to about 3.15, unfortunately. DJT is trying to bounce here. As long as we're above 32, I'm looking for an attempt for 34. I see potential in this. The VIX has this big gap to fill, so I'm hoping the VIX dips a bit and the market tries to bounce. We also formed a wick here, which is a good sign for bulls. This could be favoring downside as the market tries to rebound. The 10-year is very flat. We'll see if this head and shoulders leads to more downside for it. We're waiting to see if this gets a reaction, and same thing with the dollar. The dollar could be rejecting here. If we lose 107.8, we're looking for that gap to fill below. If that gets filled, that would once again be bullish for the markets. So with that being said, guys, the market is technically a little bit more bullish as we're making higher lows, but we'll see if we continue to fill this gap above, so give it the time it needs. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Have a good one. I will be back with another update in less than about that's like 13, 14 hours from now. I'll be back before the market ends up opening. So I'll see you guys again tomorrow before market open. Until then, just know the charts look a bit more bullish. We'll see what happens with the GDP numbers coming tomorrow. So I'll talk about those. Until then, I wish you all the best, and I'll be back very, very soon. Thank you for listening. Have a good one, and peace out.